Hey guys, this is Miss Stanley, and today we're going to be talking about microaggressions. Your essential question for this video is, how is language important when discussing privilege and oppression? There's a lot of vocabulary that's important to know and understand in order to talk about privilege and oppression, and we're going to get into that vocabulary today. So the first term that we're going to talk about is people of color. It's often abbreviated as POC, and it just means any person who is not white or of European ancestry. Pretty simple. The next term is Native communities and Indigenous populations. Now, these two terms somewhat mean the same thing, but it is still important to keep in mind which one you're using at any given time. Dominant culture. The dominant culture is often the culture that is the most powerful, widespread, or influential within a society. A good example of this is Europe. At one point, Europe had conquered a large portion of the world, and therefore had a heavy impact on the culture of many societies. The dominant culture usually establishes or influences the language that is spoken in a particular area, the culture of that area, and then also the social norms. Marginalized cultures and communities. Now, marginalized cultures are the cultures that the dominant culture kind of pushes to the side. So the definition of this is a group of people who have been pushed to the edges of society by the dominant culture. Often these cultures are not allowed a voice or an opinion in the dominant society because of their marginalization. Majority and minority groups. It's important to distinguish these from dominant and marginalized cultures. A majority group is the group with the largest number of people, while a minority group has less than or the least number of people. So there's often only one majority group, and there can be multiple minority groups. Majority and minority groups are very different from the dominant and marginalized cultures, though sometimes a group can be both. So a majority group can also be the dominant culture, while a minority group is the marginalized culture. Oppression. Oppression is somewhat of an umbrella term. The definition is a continued and cruel mistreatment or control over an individual or a group. Oppression can be big acts of cruelty, such as enslavement or the Holocaust. But it can also be small, subtle acts, such as not allowing a specific group of people to vote or own land. There are various types of oppression. Some of those types include violence, exploitation, and powerlessness. And they also include this idea of marginalization. So things like sexism, racism, or ableism, which are discriminations against a specific quality that a person has, like their gender, their race, or their ability. Privilege is a right, advantage, or immunity granted to an individual or a group of individuals. There are many types of privilege. Some of them include white privilege, socioeconomic privilege, so having wealth, gender privilege, and heterosexual privilege. It's also possible to have multiple forms of privilege, or to be privileged in some way and at a disadvantage in another way. So keep that in mind. Lastly are microaggressions. Microaggressions are indirect, subtle, and unintentional acts of discrimination. They are most often spoken, and they are things that can be said carelessly and without the intention of hurting someone's feelings, but they may carry racist or sexist, etc. undertones that could affect someone. So I do have some examples, such as the girl holding the sign that says, "But you all look alike." It's racist. It has racist undertones, similarly to the sign that this boy is holding, "Oh, I meant, where are you from?" Both of those things are things that can be said casually or even carelessly without the intention of hurting someone, but they do carry racist undertones and are therefore microaggressions. Alrighty, and that's all that I have for you today, guys. Thanks so much for watching.